My name is Darrell Kwao. Thanks once again for joining us tonight. Now, first story, President of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industries, Nana Appiah Danko, the first, has charged African chambers of commerce to boost the level of intra-regional trade to 50% in the coming years. Currently, the level of trade in Africa ranges between 12 and 20%. President of the chamber said this at the opening of the third Africa Prosperity Conference, which has brought together various chambers of commerce in Africa to Accra. The conference will have members deliberate on best practices to be adopted ahead of the signing of the Continental Free Trade Agreement by the end of 2017. There's more in this report.
The African Prosperity Conference is for captains of industry across Africa to renew their commitment to ensuring the fast passage of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Trade Minister Alan Tremantin revealed that Ghana was taking a closer interest in exploring the best trade deals with other African economies to boost intercontinental trade.
For me, we have no choice but to start believing in the fact that this whole enterprise and agenda will work. And if we have no choice and we have to make it work, then it's going to depend on two things. First is our capacity to be able to conclude the negotiations. Everybody who has been involved in trade agreements would understand that starting in the negotiations is important, but the more difficult task is how you conclude it. And it is with extreme pleasure that I find from what the Commissioner is saying that so far the negotiations are going very well.
On his part, President of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is also President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Nana Dr. Appiah Danko the first, hinted of Ghana being able to reach its macroeconomic targets by 2020.
We are hoping that we are advocates, even though various governments are going to pass sign that agreement on behalf of all of us, and the private sector, of course, is the engine of growth. And for that matter, we are saying that the trade for now is between 12 and 20. The first year, if we put ourselves together well, we are going to increase from 20% to 50%.
Joy Business also engaged the High Commissioners of South Africa and Namibia, who spoke about some best trade practices in various countries which can be replicated in Ghana.
We need to make sure that our countries are able to trade together and work together on development, industrialization, agriculture and agri-processing. And I am sure with a continental free trade area, we will be able to trade better. Our AU heads of state have said we need to increase intra-Africa trade from the low 15% where it is now to a much bigger percentage to ensure that we support one another, we help each other to grow, to industrialize, and as a continent to be able to stand on our own.
African trade as a percentage of world trade is about 2%. That is way too low. Now, the conference like this, what is going to come out of it, and the eventual adoption of the free trade area should allow us to increase that trade. And ultimately, if we are able to remove all the trade barriers between our countries and have the infrastructure that will allow us to do that trade, I think if it can go beyond 50%, then we'll have made a great progress.
The two-day conference is aimed at exploring the implications of business-state relations and the importance of the private sector's inputs into the negotiations.
Turning to banking now, and Standard Chartered Bank says it is intensifying automation of its services to help improve customer experience. The bank, which began the strategy on a pilot basis, says it is now moving into full force because of the impact on its operations. Some industry watchers have argued that this automation process being adopted by banks is just part of strategies to cut down on costs and lay off workers. But head of retail banking for Standard Chartered Bank, that is Henry Bayer, disagrees.
today, there's some things we define as what we call client journeys. A client journey is just a new jargon. It's a buzz, which is simply when a client is going through a particular type of process with a bank, what steps do they take? It's just like in every journey, you take one step, you take two steps, and so on. So if you take a typical client journey today of a client opening an account, the client, somebody will go to the client, they will fill a piece of paper, an application form, usually very long. They have to attach an ID, attach this document, attach that document. Now, when that goes to the bank, there is a whole machinery of people who are also now going to go through the process of processing this paper, ticking it, making sure everything is okay. They will call you and say this. Now, imagine how technology will change that. So if somebody comes to you with an iPad, you download an app, and that app enables you to open an account without any human intervention. So you go, you put in your national ID, maybe, and it puts up all your data, and it completes that form would have given you as paper. All you need to do is go through it and say, is the data I have there, my address, my this, are they correct? And you sign on a wet signature, and as soon as that is done, you click confirm, your account is opened. You use your own phone to take a picture of your ID, which then goes and is verified at a back-end system. So that whole journey a client will have had to walk is digitized. So what does that do in terms of the operations of a bank? Number one, it eliminates paper. Number two, it makes you more efficient. Number three, it reduces errors. Okay? And number four, it will definitely cut on the time that you used to do just any kind of operation. Will brick and mortar survive for another 20 years? I have to be a prophet to say exactly what will happen. But what I know will happen is brick and mortar will become less and less important.
Well, still in the banking space, local banks may be the hardest hit following the significant jump in the new minimum capital levels. Some of these banks over the years had rejected moves from their shareholders like SNIT and government to bring them together to create a huge financial institution. Joy Business's recent engagement with some managing directors of some of these local banks have ruled out measures. They're rather looking at raising the entire 400 million cedi minimum capital rather than go into measures. So why are these banks refusing to merge? Frank Edu is managing director of Cow Bank.
I think it's probably a cultural thing, and over time that people will come to realize that it's just business, and therefore we should be able to put 2-3 banks together. You know, there is a certain psychological resistance and barrier to that notion, but over time the business of doing business of banking and the financial requirements of doing the business of banking within the framework of the new capital requirements, Basel II, Basel III, risk adjusted capital, risk mitigation factors, etc. The new IFRS 9 proposals for calculating NPLs, etc., would force banks to look at the issue and decide that yes, we want to join together to do the business.
Mr. Edu, someone said that we've had these proposals before. Do you think that this time round it's going to happen where banks like you that engage other banks that share your vision, culture, and thinking could join hands now that they're also looking at doing the significant increase in capital requirement?
Listen, if you have a psychological problem and therefore you are not able to breach that barrier, trust me, I think the economics and mechanics of what is going to happen will force you to breach that barrier. And once you breach that barrier, you realize that it's easily possible.
Meanwhile, some banks have expressed mixed reactions on the impact of the new capital requirements on banking operations in the country. The central bank, as we've been saying, has set the minimum capital requirement at 400 million Ghana cedis, and some credit consultants are of the view that only 3 out of the 34 banks currently operating in the country are in the position to meet the new requirement. Joy Business engaged some bank customers in Accra, and this is what they had to say.
So long as the recapitalization is going to make sure that the banks are going to be able to take on bigger transactions, that is good. That is what the country needs. We should move away from where if you go to a bank and you are even looking for $5 million, credit officers or bank managers become scared of it. We should be able to, as a country, to be able to do bigger deals. And you can only do that when the banks are very strong financially. And that is it doesn't make sense to have about 30 or 40 banks when none of them, or majority of the banks, are not in a position to do bigger deals. If you increase the threshold, that does not mean you are also neglecting those in the downside of the business. A comprehensive program to take care of everybody on board. The branches that these banks are going to have, it will be nationwide. Everybody is going to be on board, so it affects nothing. It is a good thing for the country. People must explain the issues very well. Let society know that where we have gotten to as a country, if you are doing business in Ghana, you are not doing business only in Ghana. You are competing with somebody in China who is having a lot of money to compete with. Let us encourage, let us push our banks to have that minimum threshold. Push it up. I was even thinking they will push it to 1 billion.
I'm not tempted to withdraw my money to save with these banks, but I believe that these banks should go in for the necessary measure and then mobilization to be equipped on these buckets. I believe when it's left with only 3 banks, there'll be a lot of inefficiencies in the system. Currently, with these several banks, we still find ourselves being served not to the best of standards. And getting 3 banks along the line will cause a whole lot of inadequacies. But I think it's a good step for the bank, the BOG, to make. But I think the banks also needs to find time and then find funds and then brace up this opportunity. But 3 banks won't serve Ghana well. I believe they need to do something about it.
If that's the case, I don't think it's a good idea, because even looking at the many banks we have now, you go to the banks and you find a long queue, a lot of customers, and even that, you go there and take a long time before you leave. So if this thing is going to happen and it's going to remain only 3 banks, I don't think it's a good idea. I think they should see how best they will reduce what they have issued now, so that we can have, even if not all the banks, but we can have even minimum bank that can serve all of us.
Well, as banks grapple with the recapitalization deadline of December 31, 2018, experts are pushing for the NIC, that's the National Insurance Commission, to increase the capital to weed out the huge numbers in the insurance sector. The director of Case Johnson, a leading insurance consultancy in South Africa, Broussard, says it will consolidate the industry and aid penetration. He was speaking ahead of the Bank Assurance Conference slated for the 14th and 15th of this month and supported by Joy Business.
Generally speaking, what I have seen is that in a market where the capital requirements are increased, whether for banks or for insurers, it tends to consolidate the industry. So from having, let's call it 100 insurers or 100 banks, you have 10 insurers, 10 banks. What that means is that you have the banking population is more easily reached, because instead of having to go after, instead of having to go after the entire population through 100 banks, you can market to the population through 5 banks or 10 banks or through 10 insurers. And the key thing about that is that a consolidated industry, which is often driven by capitalization, means that you get economies of scale from a marketing point of view, because insurance has a massive marketing problem. It needs to be marketed. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to buy insurance today. No one does that. What people need is they need to be approached by a trusted partner, and that's often a bank. Not always, but often a bank. And yeah, so capital requirements will drive consolidation. Consolidation will mean there's more capital in fewer insurers, in fewer banks, which means they can spend that capital more cost effectively to reach customers with insurance offers.
Well, away from that, we want to update you on some developments in the mining industry. Small-scale miners are warning government would continue to lose significant revenue if it does not lift the ban on the operations. The 6-month ban on small-scale mining was intended to control illegal mining and allow government some time to spell out modalities to regulate the industry. However, after 6 months, government has been silent. Now, today, small-scale miners took to the streets to press on their demands. And joining me now is my colleague, Prince Apia, who has been following the agitations, if you like, of these small-scale miners. Thanks for joining us. First of all, I mean, in terms of revenue, how significantly is the ban affecting the mining industry? All right, you're watching Business Live. Let's hear from the PRO, or the spokesperson of the Small Scale Miners Association, while we try to work that connection with Prince. Him talking about the impact of the ban on their livelihoods.
The Trick Ultimatum said that we should put a hold to our mining activities. We did that, and we are given 1 month to move all our mining equipment for the various sites of operations. We spoke to our members, and we also complied with that. In as much as we were aggrieved and we did not support that particular move, we thought it wise, as patriotic as we are, to talk to our members and also do our very best, not considering the untold hardship that we'll be going through, to comply as well. Now the 6-month suspension has elapsed. The best government could do is to come out, roll out whatever has been tabled, that is a roadmap, to come out and say that the people with the requisite documents, this day or that date, go back to your mining sites and do the work that is expected of you. We've waited and waited. We've had series of engagements, some yielding dividends, some not yielding dividends. And we thought that as Ashanti Regional Small-Scale Miners, we should also pour our grievances for all Ghanaians and the entire world to know the untold hardship that we are going through. The academic year has just started. As I talk to you now, our walls are in the house. Now we don't even have money to feed our wives and children. The chain of employment that small-scale mining creates has been severely affected. Filling stations are folding up. Fuel station attendants have been laid off. Artisans at Swami Magazine, Abelempe and Abusokai, they are found wanting. They don't know what to do next. Jewelers, goldsmiths, gold buyers have all been affected. Even market women have been affected. And as a country, we are losing a lot, because this is creating a balance of payment deficit. Because we are always importing and never exporting. When we were in business, foreign currency was coming in to purchase the gold.
So you heard that the PR of the Small Scale Miners Association, Mike Gizo, speaking earlier to us. Hopefully we can speak to Prince, the PR who followed that demonstration, if you like. Prince, we just heard him speak about the impact on the mining industry. I mean, tell us more about how much of a contribution they make to the mining industry.
Yeah, Darryl, if you can hear me now, we know that in 2015, for instance, the Small Scale Miners Association, or Small Scale Mining Industry, contributed close to 34% of the total gold production in the country. And last year, for instance, it contributed about 31% of total gold production, which it tells you that it's very significant. And for 7 months, if this cup of sphere of the economy is not working, then it tells you that we are going to lose a lot of money. All these amounts of contribution to the total gold production is being lost. Again, the small scale miners, we know that they sell and produce their gold in the country. They don't sell it outside.
Okay, and I mean, needless to mention that there are also businesses that, you know, sort of enjoy from the activities of the small-scale miners. We had Mike Gizo talk there about the goldsmith, the market women who, of course, would sell their wares around there when the miners are operating. But let's look at the impact of today's action by the small-scale miners. What next? I mean, we're hearing that the police scuttled the demonstration. Okay, looks like we have some difficulty connecting there with Prince Apia. Would move on. Now, the IMF says the country might already be benefiting from an extension of the IMF program. The Washington-based lender has indicated the development demonstrates government's commitment to fiscal prudence. But what do all these mean to the average Ghanaian, and how do they affect their livelihoods? Kuku Apia finds out.
The IMF approved government's request to extend the program by 1 year. The $916 million package was initially given to government to help inject some life into the country's ailing economy. However, the deal has not come without conditions: a freeze on government spending in the public sector and a net freeze on employment in the public sector. So how does all this affect the average Ghanaian? So in 2015, government secured a $940 million IMF deal. Now, the deal was supposed to bail Ghana out of its ailing economy, and since then we haven't really heard that much. But recently we've been hearing things like extended line of credit. So today we're in Accra Central to find out from the average Ghanaian, what does the IMF deal really mean to them?
Okay, it's like International Monetary Fund, right? It doesn't affect me much, but as it goes, IMF, they take loans from other sectors like the other countries, right? So it's still a benefit from we the Ghanaians, especially the youths. At least, I'm a jobless guy now, but at least I have something I do. It will have at least create something like for me to do, and like an employment.
Yeah, unless we send it to court. We send it to court, know what you find it, the money from, what you know they're raising. It will affect tax very, very, very soon. We don't like that. So Ghana is very, very serious with it. Right now we don't have any money at all. So if we find out to get that money.
I don't see the use. It hasn't helped pay our children's school fees. So as for me, I don't see the use of the money.
IMF, I don't really know about IMF. For instance, it can help us, but I don't know about it.
So we've spoken to Ghanaians to find out what they think about the IMF or what comes to mind when they hear IMF bailout. Now we're going to speak to a financial expert, Charles Mensah, to find out exactly what it is and how it affects us, the average Ghanaians.
Money, money, money.
We're here with financial consultant Mr. Charles Mensah to get a very basic breakdown of what the IMF bailout was about and how it affects the average Ghanaian, which is you and I.
If it is that you've asked for a loan facility from a bank and your sales or your profits are not coming the way you had projected, it's in the light that you go to the bank and say, I want to have some discussion with you to extend the repayment period beyond 12 months to 16 months to 18 months. When you do that, it's much better than the people looking up to you to service the debt, and then when the time comes, you will be pussyfooting, and that can create credibility problem. So it's good that you review as time goes, and then you make clear to the banker that, look, I'm having a challenge, but I have a potential. Help me clear the challenge.
So what does this mean for the pocket of the average Ghanaian?
Those in the private sector, especially when you have to borrow. If you notice, the treasury rate over time has been going down. It means that something's happening. It means that the interest rate for the ordinary private sector business person is going to go down. Now, when these things are going down, it means that profitability will go up, because hitherto the cost of servicing your debt with the bankers were getting higher and higher, and those affecting your profits. So once something positive is happening in the system, the currency, the forex, is equally stable over a period of time. So it's helping them. Hitherto, there was a panic in the system. So when you hear every morning you want to know the forex, you want to buy dollars to store, to keep, you are worried. But now there's that element of peace in terms of the financial stability side.
With podcast, you'd have learned a few things. One is that the IMF bailout was basically a loan given to government to inject some money into our ailing economy. And two is that the extended line of credit is to extend the period of time in which government will use to pay that money back. Now you know a few things about the IMF bailout, the extended line of credit, and what that means for the average Ghanaian like myself. Reporting for Joy Business, this is Kukwa Apia.
All right, the IMF program broken down to our level. Moving on now to our interview of the day, and CEO of GIP, CEO Figuran, says the newly announced capital requirement for banks will not affect foreign investments, but rather boost investor confidence. Here is our interview with Mr. Yofi Grant.
Interview of the day.
I speak. Many of the African countries are reforming to do business better, to be attractive investment destinations. But so is Ghana. And I think Ghana, as I've always said, Ghana once was the spearhead of African political liberation. Once again, I think Ghana can step up to the plate and be the spearhead of African economic liberation and empowerment.
Well, speaking about investment, foreign investment in that regard, you know, the recent developments that has rocked the financial sector with the Bank of Ghana increasing the minimum capital requirement to, you know, in excess of 400 million Ghana cedis. How do you think this is, you know, reshaping the decision of foreign investors?
I think it's for a number of foreign investors that I've spoken to. Well, I mean, this is it's not an uncommon thing to happen. Countries look at their financial sector and see how best they can empower it and strengthen it to be able to finance growth and development in the economy. And so for us, the more powerful the banks are in terms of their total assets and their capital strength, the better it will be to funding some of the big ticket items that are on government's development agenda.
So when all is said and done, we've been talking about interregional trade being in excess of 12%. How best do you think you're expecting this to increase in terms of foreign investments by the end of the year?
Well, the belief is that with the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area, we're going to see definitely increased trade amongst African countries, and we expect it to move.
Interview of the day.
All right, that's it for our program tonight. Thanks for watching. My name is Daryl Kwa. We'll see you same time tomorrow.